This is Johnny with TigerBomb MMA, and today I'm going to go over UFC 313, Pereira versus Ankalaev, give you my thoughts, predictions on the entire card. I'm not going to waste much time. I'm going to go through these pretty quickly. Before I go through these predictions on this card, I wanted to give you my very quick thoughts on the previous card, which was the Cop versus Almabayev, UFC Vegas 103. I'm just going to give you my very quick thoughts on my biggest winner of the card and the biggest loser of the card. Biggest winner of the card for me has to be Hyder Emil. The dude fought injured, fought like a dog. He essentially brass balled his way to beating Gomis in a fight that some people might have thought that Gomis won. To me, even though I predicted Gomis and I was actually very high on the guy, the fact that this fucking 35-year-old guy who has limited time and somewhat questionable with chinniness has that type of grit and determination to win a fight like that, just tired, exhausted, moving forward. If Gomis would have added some elbows, may have been a different story because he would just kind of crash into Gomis. But dear God, that man's a fucking wrecking machine. Excited to see what he does next. Biggest loser of the card for me was, who else could it be other than Charles Johnson? The dude not only was talking mad shit to his opponent, a guy who was shorter than him, significant reach disadvantage and height disadvantage, and still ends up losing a fight. No doubt about it. He did not win round number 2. That's what Charles Johnson tends to do, right? If you took him as a dog, fine. That's great, you know. I picked him to win. Didn't bet him at all. I picked Hemerov to actually win at plus like 106, which was surprisingly easy. I thought that Johnson was going to do more, but the guy is sometimes very afraid to throw, and he continues to bitch on the internet, so go fuck himself. But yeah, back to the card at hand, Pereira versus Ankalaev, a lot to talk about. I'm going to condense it incredibly quickly. It's been a fucking long week for me, and on top of that, we're supposed to have a fucking snowstorm, so not going to edit this much. You might hear a lot of cursing. Hopefully I don't talk too much, but let's get right into this. Let's see here. Yeah, first fight of the night, very short notice. We've got Chris Guitierrez versus John Castaneda. No odds from what I've seen is that Castaneda is okay, cool. I thought I lost my mind. I could have sworn I saw Castaneda as like minus 230, but he is minus 150. Come back on Guitierrez, taking this fight on short notice. I don't know if he had a camp. Let me check actually. Now I'm very curious if the brother had a camp. Because Castaneda for sure did, but he was going to fight a completely different matchup. He was going to fight John Matsumoto on this card. So, yeah, I guess he had a camp. So, we're good here. So, both had a camp, just different opponents. Castaneda, as I mentioned, he's more of a moment winner than anything. He's solid. I like Castaneda, but he's fighting a much more difficult opponent here in Guitierrez. Yes, okay, Guitierrez, his last win was against Quang Li. Probably not the best look, but tends to happen sometimes, right? You get a guy on short notice, and you don't always look to your highest potential. The low kicks of Guitierrez are going to be a play here. The movement of Gutierrez, the height, he doesn't have the reach per se. He's down by like 4 inches in reach, but his activity, just being on the outside, he's going to be the better striker between the two. Castaneda can strike. He's been training at Bang Tao, I believe, or Tiger Muay Thai, one of the two. But with his wrestling background, he should mix in wrestling here. He tends not to. He's kind of a low output kind of guy. Luckily for Gutierrez, this is going to kind of look more like a sparring matchup. And if that's the case, the movement and the fluidity of Gutierrez at dog odds, I will take a shot on him. Castaneda, anytime he's fighting a competent opponent, I'm weary, okay? I don't think he's going to be able to knock out Gutierrez. I don't think he'll be able to just completely dominate Gutierrez in the wrestling. So give me Gutierrez to win this one by a decision. Kind of a low output sparring matchup between two guys that, Hispanics. Next bout. All right. Ozzy Diaz versus DeJordan Santos. Hear me out, okay? Hear me out. I've been talking about this for a while, but we've got DeJordan minus 185, and this is a middleweight bout. And actually, okay, cool. I was checking to see if the previous one was a catchweight. Ozzy Diaz, he is plus 155. DeJordan minus 185. Okay, the dog here in Ozzy Diaz. Let's make no doubt about it, right? Like no doubts, no bullshit. Ozzy Diaz is kind of a bum, okay? On the regional scene, he's got regional wins, but the guy doesn't seem to be the type of guy to win in the UFC. But I actually think in this matchup, it could be a very good opportunity for him to actually get a UFC win when he wouldn't otherwise. This to Jordan Santos, he is 10-1. I am not impressed by this guy, okay? When I look at his record, I'm just not impressed. He's fighting absolute cans, okay? Okay. All right. So this dude fought a guy in Felipe Montinho, who is 5'7" at middleweight, and it's just kind of embarrassing the level of competition that he's been fighting. His only loss was to a Christian Torres, and let's be honest about that. Okay, I'll be honest about it. He didn't look great. He's primarily a kickboxer. He has some takedown defense. Doesn't tend to have a whole ton of power, and he fought a guy who's 6 foot tall. He and Jordan Santos looked out of shape, so I'll give him props that he got in better shape, and he probably isn't going to look this shit like he did against this Torres guy, but he gassed out, and then this Torres dude was just kind of landing on him at will. After he had just kind of gotten mentally broken, he just started swinging indiscriminately, and he was landing some decent shots on Santos. He even hurt him a few times. So I honestly think with his UFC or Dana White Contender Series bout against that Curry fellow, William Curry, is it? Will Curry. Curry is a fucking bum star beater. Okay, he looks like $1,000,000. He was like minus 400. This dude won as a dog, and had he not won as a dog, in my opinion, I don't think they would have brought him into the UFC. He just withstood everything that Curry had, which is essentially if he can't finish you early, he breaks mentally and he just starts looking like absolute dog shit. So much so that Will Curry's so bad that he thought he won that fight. He raised his hand like he won. I think DeJordan is not the guy. I think he actually can drop down to 170. For Ozzy Diaz, as big of a bum as he is, the level of competition that he has fought is superior to Santos, whether win or lose. Every time he's fought any UFC caliber guy, yeah, he's been starched, but he looked decent, okay? Hear me out. He looked decent against real guys like Joe Pyfer. He got knocked out by Joe Pyfer, but even when Joe Pyfer took his back, he was able to reverse. He threatened Joe Pyfer, okay? Min Ying Zhang, that was at 205. I don't think he's a 205er, but the guy's 6'4". He's got enough experience. He has power in his hands. I think he has some grappling. I think it's a major risk, okay? I'm just saying. I think it's a big risk betting on Diaz, but I think Diaz might be the play because I do think he can use his size. I think he can move forward. I think he can eat the shots of Santos, who I don't think has a whole ton of power, and maybe impose his will, maybe grapple him. It just depends. If Ozzy wants to implement some wrestling here, him being the bigger guy, I think it could really do him well. I just don't trust him to do so. But let's go back to his record, right? He lost to Dominic Reyes in the amateurs, and this dude's primarily getting knocked out. If you can't put him out, he's there to fight you for the entire way. And he's got some decent wins. Bevon Lewis, he knocked him out. Chuck Campbell is the guy that Bukauskas beat in like the 4th round by knockout to get back into the UFC. So they're not terrible names. So yeah, for me, give me Ozzy Diaz to somehow get this win. I'm just not sold on this Santos. I really thought the odds would have been more in the favor of Santos. The fact that it's minus 185 kind of gives me the indication that it's just weird correction of the line. He was a big underdog against Will Curry, who sucks. This guy somehow won, and now he's a plus 185 over a guy who's going to be much bigger than him with a 4-inch reach advantage. And I know I'm saying this, Ozzy sucks ass, but I think he can pull it out. This guy has something that I think DeJordan doesn't have, which is power, and he's a bit gritty. I think as long as he doesn't get knocked out, I think he can actually win this fight, either by knockout or a decision. So I'm going to say decision in this case. I think he'll find a way to get DeJordan to the ground. Although DeJordan has some decent takedown defense, it's mostly against shitty competition and Will Curry, who was shooting from a mile away. So crucify me in the comments there. Next bout, we've got Marion Santos versus Francis Marshall. I've talked about Francis Marshall recently, but he's plus 290. I don't know if those odds are accurate, but here's the thing about Francis. He is not a bad fighter. He's very solid everywhere, solid hands, solid jiu-jitsu. I believe it is Kurt Pellegrino. Yeah, it is it's right there. Fucking Pellegrino mixed martial arts. Kurt Pellegrino, who gave him a black belt. So he's a solid black belt. The guy's good. Unfortunately, he's fighting Marion Santos. Marion doesn't miss weight. I think this guy is a special character. But his line is ridiculous. Minus 375. This guy has a bright future ahead of him. If his takedown defense holds up, he is going to batter Francis Marshall. The threat of the low kicks, just the power that he possesses, the teeps to the body, his feints, he imposes himself against his opponent that makes their opponent just freeze up a bit. And then if they get a bit wild trying to close distance on him, because he does have excellent footwork, that's when he throws that hand or a counter like we saw against Con Offley, who ran into that wood chipper of his. This guy's looking in great shape. Again, if he doesn't miss weight, he should be fine. If he misses weight, he's even more fine. I just don't like the line. The only way I see Santos losing this fight is if Marshall just relentlessly wrestles him and eventually gets him down and tires him out. If Santos's takedown defense holds up, which it has recently, again, it does depend on the weight. I want to see him make weight beforehand. That's my biggest fear. If I'm planning on parlaying him, I'm going to wait until weigh-in day. But again, Francis Marshall is good enough to be able to use his skill set to beat a more talented guy if that talented guy isn't taking the fight seriously or he's like dying on the scale. So give me Santos to win by a knockout. Not to mention that if Dennis Bazooka is hurting you on short notice or not in his latest win in the UFC, that's a huge red flag for me. So I know he beat Bazooka. He beat who beat Connor Matthews. And I'm saying, like, Francis is the best of those three bums in the featherweight division. But yeah, give me Santos to win this one by either knockout in the second round or a very dominant decision. Next bout, we've got Carlos Leal minus like 400,000. It says minus 600 here, but he is ballooning up. Let me tell you, I was trying to parlay him early, and it was not working. He's minus 800 against Alex Morono, plus 430. At this point, it's like dog or pass. I don't think there's much value on Leal, either unless you take like knockout prop or submission. Leal is the younger guy. He's fought tremendous competition outside the UFC. Some people thought he won against Renat Fakhretdinov in his UFC debut. He absolutely didn't. He's not Muslim enough to do so, especially in the Muslim territory. But yeah, Carlos Leal, he should come in here and just bulldoze. His cardio held up. As long as his masking agent holds up and he doesn't get popped before, I mean, I'm telling you, this guy comes in all fucking roided up, fucking pimples all over his back. If they don't test him immediately, and if he doesn't pass, that's the only way I don't see him winning this fight. But yeah, give me Leal. I'm going to say round number one. Like, Morono has served his purpose. He hasn't been looking the same. He has that herky-jerky style, but if Leal connects on him, it's a wrap. And this is another situation. It's a big letdown spot for Carlos Leal if he comes in here, and it tends to happen. I know you've seen it. You've heard the narrative. A guy comes in, looks like he won a fight against a guy who he shouldn't have beaten, and then he underperforms his next bout. I don't think that's the case. I just think Carlos Leal is a legit UFC caliber fighter, and fighting at welterweight against a guy like Morono, it's like they're giving him a, like, good job, kid. Here you go. Destroy Morono and get him out of the UFC. He gets paid too much because he's a vet, right? Morono, and they pay you by, I believe, still by the amount of times that you fought in the UFC. I remember like the whole Reebok deal, like, oh, if you fought this amount of times, we'll give you $400,000 plus a Reebok coupon. In this case, I think they're paying Morono too much, and they want Carlos Leal, who's fighting on like a 30,000 contract, to finish him and get him out of the UFC is my guess. So give me Leal, round number one knockout. Next bout, we got Bruno Ferreira versus Armen Petrosyan. I actually don't like this matchup for either guy. It's a very, it's a coin flip because Petrosyan should win this fight if he fights intelligently on the outside, kicks to the body, jab. But Bruno Ferreira, I think, is the play here. I think the guy, obviously, he has the knockout power. Even though he lost his last bout to a very similar fighter in Bus Magomedov, they fight similar, like kickboxing style. I think Petrosyan, oh man, Petrosyan has been looking suspicious as fuck lately. Like, him getting knocked out by Shara Magomedov was not a good look. This one's a tough one for me for different reasons. I actually liked how Bruno Ferreira looked against Abus because he didn't throw a whole ton of output. He waited for him to kind of get tired, and then he did hurt him. But then the problem was he got taken down and then eventually submitted in the third. As for Petrosyan, he throws a lot. He has a lot of output. Let me actually check the stats because I'm positive. I believe he outthrows him by a lot. Yeah, strikes landed per minute, about 6 for Petrosyan and about 4 for Bruno Ferreira. The issue with Ferreira, he is not a decision fighter. at all. Like, he will finish you first or second round. The under's always there. Petrosyan, like, I was high on Petrosyan when he first came in. The dude looked like a stud. Like, he would get taken down, he'd pop right back up and just maraud dudes. But he doesn't seem to be having a lot of success with power. The power is going to be on Ferreira. To me, it's a coin flip. My brain is telling me Petrosyan because, hey, stay on the outside, kick, move around. What Petrosyan does, he's very good in kickboxing matchups. But if Bruno mixes in takedowns with his judo black belt and his jiu-jitsu black belt, what's that fight going to look like? I'm not a fan at picking this one. I think it's, accurately lined, minus 165 for Petrosyan, plus money on Ferreira. I'll take the dog on this one. I do think that if he connects on Petrosyan, it could definitely hurt him. The other thing, I didn't like the way that Petrosyan, when he got hit by that spinning back fist, that double back fist by Shara Bullet, I hated the fact that he just laid there. He could have popped back up. He just accepted his fate. I did not like that at all, okay? I didn't think he was knocked out. He was definitely hurt, but he didn't try fighting. That was not something I want. Ferreira, on the other hand, like, you're going to have to put him out. He's been put out. He tends to have issues with long, tall strikers. But again, if he can hurt Petrosyan, I think it could be a wrap. He's definitely the harder of the two when it comes to the hitting. So give me Ferreira, round number 1 knockout. Not confident at all. Next bout, we've got Ray Tsuruya versus Joshua Van, flyweight, minus 190 for Van. Come back on Tsuruya, plus 160. So when looking at this, I do like what Tsuruya does. He's a very good grappler, not much in the way of striking. And Joshua Van, high-level striking, great boxer, very good takedown defense. They're both very young. But to me, if I'm being honest, like, Joshua Van is just leagues ahead of Ray Tsuruya. The problem is, Ray Tsuruya. The problem is that if Ray Tsuruya, if he can do what he does best, which is like dominate on the ground, that's just so much danger. I think the odds are very accurate because Tsuruya, despite the fact that he's very limited on the feet, I don't think he necessarily needs it. He can get you down, put you in awkward ass positions. That dude is a submission threat. But for Joshua Van, I do like the way that he's been working on his grappling. I think him training with his team, who is his main coach, fought for the UFC. I'm blanking out on his name. Pop for roids a ton. Oh my God, Daniel Pineda. Pineda is a fucking pitbull, obviously. The dude, I think, has been training Joshua Van very well at sub-defense and even submission offense. His wrestling is not too bad either. His counter wrestling is good. But what Joshua Van does better than a lot of people in that division, and shit, even in the whole UFC, is attack the body indiscriminately. He's not a headhunter. And the fact that Tsuruya, if he starts huffing and puffing, if he doesn't finish Joshua Van early, I think Joshua's going to put it on him, attack the body, make him miss bad. And if he's having issues with like a Carlos Hernandez on the ground, then shit, I think Joshua Van's going to give him a lot of trouble. Give me Van. I'm thinking like TKO round number 3, possibly decision. If it does go to a decision, it's going to suck because if at any point Tsuruya does muscle him down to the ground, the problem with judging is if he doesn't do shit, for example, doesn't throw punches, doesn't do anything, and then Joshua Van gets back up and he wins the later part of the round, often cases you'll get some jiu-jitsu judges that just jerk off the guy, whoever got more top control. So it's always very risky, like very, very risky, okay? Because I have my theories about MMA judging and shit, but nevertheless, give me Joshua Van, TKO number 3, round number 3. It could be that if Joshua does not get that third round finish, the judges may not give him the fight. That's a big may, because I'm thinking of it like similar to the Hackbarast versus El Gringo, where it truly was a split decision. It could have gone either way. It's like, are you going to judge more on the volume that was being thrown by Ribovic or the power punches that were landing despite lower volume of Hackbarast? So I understand that being a split, not necessarily a robbery, but when you view it in that manner, if you got 1 or 2 judges that are like, I have a black belt, I know how hard it is to keep a guy down, who cares about a couple of hard punches to the liver from Joshua Van? Like, I'll eat those any day because I'm a black belt. But yeah, that worries me when it comes to these striker versus grappler matchups. So moving on, we've got Curtis Blaydes on the prelims, baby. He went from the heavyweight title picture to the prelims against a newcomer, no less, in what the hell's his name? Rizvan Kuniev. So, very simply put, we know who Curtis Blaydes is. He fought for the title, got knocked out. To me, Curtis Blaydes is one of the dumbest UFC fighters ever. He doesn't use his wrestling. I've said it on many occasions that this guy, if he gets clipped, that's when he'll start wrestling. And Kuniev, I'm not going to say I wasn't impressed or impressed, but the guy, he's in the UFC now. He has a wrestling background, and his striking's not terrible, but he is plus 250. He's got a 76-inch reach. I don't really consider him to be in the caliber of Curtis Blaydes when we think of Curtis Blaydes as, the fighter who gave fucking Tom Aspinall his first UFC loss. I don't view him as that guy anymore. This guy's taken a ton of punishment. And again, he's not trustworthy. This guy, if he does use his wrestling, check this out. If he uses his wrestling primarily just attacking the single leg, I think his wrestling's better than Kuniev. Kuniev he can wrestle. I don't know if he's going to be able to dominate Curtis Blaydes on the ground. I don't think he'll be able to hold him down. His best chance is to try to knock out Curtis. The problem is Curtis is more than willing to engage with Kuniev. I don't know which Blaydes is going to show up. If Blaydes comes in here to wrestle, he can win this one. But minus 330, I don't trust it. I'm going to pick Blaydes because, again, if he decides that he wants to win this fight and he doesn't want to lose and get knocked out by a newcomer, he should win this one by a decision, possibly a nasty knockout with ground and pound. But if Kuniev maintains it on the feet, the play for me is going to be Kuniev by knockout or just money line. So I wouldn't trust Blaydes at all. I've been saying it for a long time. He's a fucking chinny retard. I've always said it from the beginning. Chinny retard. I'm not editing this fucking video. Next bout. King Green, main card opener. King Green, they fucking really did it. Bobby King Green versus Mauricio Ruffy. One shot. Minus 590 for Ruffy. Come back on Bobby Green. Plus 420. I'm sure he would appreciate those odds on him. For, very simply put, it's going to be a Ruffy knockout. Okay? I understand people fading Ruffy because of his last fight where he fought at 165 against the short notice Yontop. Yontop, who's a Peruvian marauder with a great chin. Had it been anybody else, Ruffy, same fight, same punches land, he would have killed whoever they put in front of him. If that was Bobby Green that night, he would have killed Bobby Green 3 times. Bad. It would have been they had to resurrect Bobby Green, put him on a stick, and then have Ruffy knock him out again, and then wake him up again. Ruffy is just, at this point, too good. He's too young. He has the reflexes of Conor McGregor. Yes, he has some things he has to work on. His cardio didn't look great. He did lose that third round to Yontop, but are you going to blame him for essentially not being able to knock out a guy that tough like Yontop? And then Yontop is like, well, fuck it, I'll make a fight. Yontop's a dog, okay? Plus the weight miss and whatever. Ruffy should be able to primarily just use his reflexes here to knock out Bobby Green. Bobby, I love Bobby. He talks mad shit. He's probably going to have some good moments here, but not very many and not for very long. He's much older. His reflexes have gone downhill with these younger, faster, more hungry strikers. He just can't take it. The horrible look between him and Patty. If Patty is making you shoot for a takedown when Patty's best shit is on the ground, what's going on with Bobby Green? Is the CTE sitting in? I don't know. Give me Ruffy round number 1 knockout. I don't know, man. I don't even know if I want to. I wanted to parlay him, but minus 590, shit. I might just do inside the distance because there's no doubt in my mind that Ruffy will get it done. Green's chin just. Remember that Jalen Turner knockout? Jesus Christ. Moving on. Amanda Lemos versus Yasmin Lucindo. Minus 130 on Lucindo. Comeback on Lemos is plus 110. This, honest to God, might be the dumbest pick of the night for me, but I'm going with Lemos, right? I'm almost positive I'm missing something here, okay? Plus 110 on the. I know she's way older. She's 37, and Lucindo's much younger at 23. What's that? 14-year age difference. The thing is that despite you'll look at Lucindo's record of 17-5, and you'll think she is seasoned enough, and at this age she is wise beyond her years. She's still very, very green. very green. I think in this matchup, it's going to be very tough for her. I don't know of anything that she does better than Amanda Lemos. Is she going to take Amanda Lemos down? I think that'd be wise, but she was having trouble with Marina Rodriguez. She even got hurt by Rodriguez. It went to a split. Most people might have thought that Rodriguez won that fight. Lemos, on the other hand, she's been fighting the top level of this women's division for the longest time. She fought um, she knocked out Marina Rodriguez. For one, she went to a war. She got dominated by Wiley Zhang, but she didn't get finished. Mackenzie Dern, great fight. The way she was moving in that fight, and then ultimately she got submitted by Virna Jandiroba, who at this point she's on her championship run. I wouldn't be surprised if she wins the belt. As for Lucindo, they're giving her the Brogan Walker's not finishing her. Polyana Viana was a very good win, but Polyana's an idiot. Carolina, way past her prime, never looked in her prime. And then Marina Rodriguez, where, again, that was a bad look in my eyes. It showed how green she is. She does throw a lot of volume. It's just that she's not a complete fighter yet. I think she needs she definitely this is I think it's just too much too soon. Despite the fact that most of the time younger fighters win the matchups, like I think 70 or 65% of the time, what I've noticed is that if you're not quite ready for that upper echelon of that division, age or not, the more experienced fighter tends to win that. If if Amanda's not completely washed, plus 110 on a proven commodity with power in that left hand, with great footwork, high fight IQ compared to Lucindo, give me Lemos to win this one by a decision or possibly even a knockout. But we'll see, man. If Lucindo comes out here and just starts ragdolling Lemos, I'd be impressed, because I think with these younger fighters, they can make leaps and bounds in improvements. But damn, I'm not seeing it quite there. I thought her fight IQ against Rodriguez was smart enough to, let's take her down. But man, is it going to be that easy against Lemos? I don't think so. So moving on. This fight right here, Jalen Turner versus Ignacio Bahamondes. To me, it's going to be a great fight while it lasts. If it lasts, there's a lot of questions I have for both men. Okay, Jalen Turner minus 115. I think I've heard he is now the dog. Let me take a look. Yeah, he is plus 107, plus 103. Bahamondes is taking over, and I understand that. Okay, there's narratives up the ass with this fight. Bahamondes, he trains with Bilal Muhammad. I will not acknowledge, he's not my champion, not my welterweight champ. Maybe you don't need to watch the breakdown of Bilal versus Jack Della. But Ignacio Bahamondes, he's definitely a kid who has been improving throughout his UFC tenure. But I'm not sold on him quite yet. There's still things that worry me about Bahamondes. And for Turner, we know with Turner, right? He doesn't have heart. He gasses out. He's kind of a one-round fighter. And you look, he has never won a decision in the UFC. Let me actually go back and reconfirm that. I don't even think he's ever won a decision ever. He's had 14 total wins. And yeah, going back, even in his amateurs, I'm not seeing that he's won a decision. He lost a decision, never won a decision. Maybe early on he might have won one where that's just listing it as a win, but he's never won a decision in his life. You look at the fight with Gamrot, many people thought he had won that one. Not good. So he has a 100% losing record when it goes to a decision. The Dan Hooker fight. Interesting about that Dan Hooker fight is that I still think you could have given it to Jalen Turner. I think round number 2 was... Oh, man. Round number 2, he beat the shit out of Dan Hooker. Round number 1 went to Turner. He was looking great. Round number 2, he beat the shit out of Hooker. But here's the crazy thing about judging. The last thing that happened was in the final minute, Jalen Turner stopped looking good. The crowd was going wild because they thought that Dan Hooker hurt him. I don't think he actually got hurt. I think he just kind of got overwhelmed a bit. He was trying to take a breather and try to recollect himself. And then Dan Hooker actually cracked him with something that made him a bit defensive, which made it look worse for him on the optics of the judges. He gets taken down. His back gets taken. He does not fight the choke. I'm assuming either because of fatigue or he just thought he's not going to get it. We're running out of time. Not enough time. Regardless of that, horrible fucking look in a fight that had he made slight better fucking adjustments, either clinch up with a guy or fucking even fight the choke, I think that would have been like, oh, it's a little too late for Dan Hooker. It wasn't enough. That head kick landed. If you remember that head kick that Dan Hooker ate in that fight, flush to the face, that did not knock him out somehow. That was a big moment. I think that was the biggest moment up until Jalen Turner basically gave up the rear naked choke. So had it not been for that, he had made some adjustments, he would have won that fight. But that's the thing with Jalen. You don't know what you're going to get with him sometimes. He is uber talented. He is fast. He hits hard. He will dangle off your neck. This guy is too fucking good to be this much of a liability with your money. As a dog, I like him in this spot. When I heard about the matchup, I liked it in this spot as well. This is also the first time in, like, he has fought in the last 4 fights. He has fought Moicano, who had just fought for the title. He's top 10. King Green, Bobby Green, not top 10, but we saw what he did to him in that first round. Dan Hooker, now in the top 10, went to a split decision with him. Mateus Gamrot, top 10, went to a split decision with him. Anytime he fights someone that's not quite in that top level, he runs through them like no fucking other. He will either hurt you, knock you out, or dangle off of your neck or choke you out. With Bahamondes, my issue with him is that he's a great striker. He's very young. He's very smart. He's getting better. Very similar. But with him, anytime he fights anyone with a higher level, it doesn't have to be top 10 or top 15. He looks shit. John Makdessi in his UFC debut, smaller guy, whipped his ass. Horrible boxing defense. That's the number one concern for me in Bahamondes is his terrible boxing defense. He needs someone where he is the better striker completely and he can stuff takedowns. And that's the trend that I see with the guy. Rong Zhu at that time sucked, okay? And then we have Trey Ogden. Trey Ogden doesn't fight. And if you can just stuff him and keep him at bay, he won't do shit. Ludwig Klein, smaller, greater boxing, was able to even take down Bahamondes and control him. And he lost that decision pretty clearly. He got hurt bad by Ludwig Klein with an overhand right. And the first thing that Bahamondes did was shoot in for a takedown. If he does that against Jalen, who, if he hurts you in the first round, he has no problem going for that neck. So I'm concerned there. Christos Giagos, if you can't finish Christos Giagos, you don't belong. And then Manuel Torres, that was a great spot for him because Torres at the time was like on a roll. But many people had seen already this guy's a little too wild, too reckless. And against the guy who is just so clean, we saw what happened, right? He literally knocked out the Mexican fighting spirit out of Loco Torres. He turned over and covered up on his day, on his card, the Mexican card. It was hilarious as shit to me, and I cashed out. Had it not been for that play that I had on Bahamondes, I would have had a horrible night during UFC Noche. But yeah, props to Bahamondes and that plus money. But still, I worry about him. What is he going to do here against Jalen Turner if Jalen, in the first round, who is a front runner, hits him fucking hard and he goes in for a takedown? Is boxing being poor? He will be the slower of the two. It just depends, right? My way of playing this one is Jalen Turner either inside the distance or at this point money line, or Bahamondes decision, or possibly round 3 as Herb Dean, the gold standard, told me on the Discord. Go fuck yourself, by the way. It's going to be an interesting bout between these two, but I am leaning Turner for that reason. He has high finishing upside, but you need to know what you're getting into with Jalen Turner. So give me Turner by submission in round number 1. I think if he can hurt Bahamondes, which I suspect he will, because you go back and you see that Roosevelt-Roberts fight, they were similar in height. This is the first time both men are kind of fighting similar heighted guys. He was landing a jab on him indiscriminately and busting his nose up. So that's what makes me kind of like interested in this fight. As for Jalen Turner, because he's going to be the faster of the two. I think he's more dynamic, equally as good at striking. But if he starts to slow down, he is going to start looking like dog shit. So he's still young. I want to see him make weight first. He's only missed once from what I can tell, but I want to make sure he looks good. Give me Jalen Turner submission round number 1, but not confident quite yet. I want to see more. Next bout, co-main event, we've got a short notice bout. Rafael Fiziev coming in on short notice to fight Justin Gaethje in the rematch. And he is minus 130. Let me make sure if that's correct, because some people will come in and swoop in that dog money of Justin Gaethje for no reason, and then they'll swap the line. So actually, people are betting Fiziev, which I don't blame them. I'm going with him as well. Just to kind of keep it short, the first fight we look at the first fight because we don't need to see anything else. These two guys are going to come out here and strike. Justin's not going to shoot in for takedowns. He's not going to do anything different. I thought he would have done that here against Fiziev, and he did not. He shot for one takedown, and Fiziev easily brushed it off. The first fight was really, really, really close. Okay, and I actually thought that Fiziev did enough to win the first 2 rounds. We look at the scorecards. It was Mark Collette, Paul Sutherland, and Clemens Warner. Who the fuck are these guys? Primarily Paul Sutherland, this fucking idiot, gave a 10-8 round to Gaethje. So the only 10-8 round in that fight went to Justin Gaethje, and he didn't do enough to get a 10-8 round. So this guy's a moron. Did I think that Gaethje won that round? Yes, he won that round clearly, but it was a close round still. The problem is he did more damage in that fight. I honestly do think, looking at these scorecards, that kind of Rafael got robbed here. Because had it been Mark Collette being not a moron and giving round number 2, which to me was Fiziev's best round, to Fiziev would have won that fight. And I think it's going to be the same thing. It was just a circumstantial, problematic thing that happened to Fiziev, which was he got cut with a couple strikes. Whether they were grazing strikes, his eyes got cut, which caused blood, which makes it look like you're losing. But his output is definitely good. Now, you might say, well, he's just coming off of a knee injury against Gamrot. He's still looking good. I don't give a shit about the knee injury. People come back from knee injuries all the time. It might even serve him well to maybe not be as fast and just be a little less dynamic. Maybe not throw everything into your strikes. Just be more cerebral. If he does that, I think he can do well. Just kind of use your speed as footwork to avoid Justin Gaethje and just kind of outpoint him. And then when the time is right, outspeed him with knockout power. Why I'm fading Justin, we seen it. We've seen the memes. I've seen Justin Gaethje turn into a circular ball like Sonic the Hedgehog on the internet and collect rings. That's how many fucking times I've seen that knockout from Max Holloway. And then recently I just saw the aftermath of what they didn't show you, and Justin was really fucking done. He was done. He was really hurt. That is a life-altering knockout for a guy who has been in so many wars outside the UFC. The Luis Palomino fights back in World Series of Fighting. I was back in the day, so let me tell you a quick shit about me. I have an old vintage Mercedes, and I was like getting fucking wasted off of the paint stripper that I was applying to the chrome rims they were painted at the time while watching Justin Gaethje fight Luis Palomino in the house where I was living in their basement. And I'm like, oh, well, this great fucking fight is awesome. And I'm just like, why am I so dizzy? So I remember that a little vaguely, but those fights were brutal. And that's the way Justin fights. You can't change that. With this latest knockout, I cannot trust his chin for shit. The only time Justin was looking really dominant was when he was using that jab on Fiziev to bust him up. But other than that, I think it's a 50-50 matchup at that time. If Fiziev comes in here looking completely rusty, well, joke's on me, but I like Fiziev in these odds. I like him by knockout or decision. I'm going to lean decision. But yeah, I really am going to enjoy this fight. I think the likelihood of a knockout is higher because of that damage that Justin has had. You know, you can't count him out. He is a high-level fighter still, even at 36 after the knockout. But Fiziev, if he's able to do that to you and you're able to go that close, and now that they're going to be in where was that fight, actually? Now I'm curious. Where were these moronic judges in that first fight between these two? That would have been... Is it the UK? No. Was it? Yeah, it was in London. So these stupid British judges didn't know how to fucking see a fight here. But yeah, these US judges, they're going to give it to Fiziev. Next bout, we have got the main event, Alex Pereira, 37 years old, minus 120. Come back on Magomed Ankalaev, plus 100. Is that correct still? It's a pick'em now because people have been betting Ankalaev kind of blindly. For me, let me just tell you real quick, it's going to be really hard for me, even at this point in life, knowing that Ankalaev could be his hardest, most difficult matchup to pick against Pereira. I've done it once before in a fight that I thought he legitimately could lose, and then he ended up doing one of the most viral highlights of all time where he gets kicked in the balls by Jamahal Hill, brushes it off, and then knocks him out a second later. And people try to recreate it. Izzy tried to recreate it, didn't work. Alex Pereira, I'm never going to pick against him, even if I think he's capable of losing here. But the more I look at the matchup, like Ankalaev, the theory is that he's going to come out here and wrestle. Can he wrestle? Yes. Will he wrestle? He has to. He absolutely has to. But honest to God, I think he's more likely to get a knockout over Pereira, because we know Pereira. He's been hit. He's not the cleanest striker, but his boxing and his head movement and his defense is definitely getting better. He's a high level kickboxer as it is, and he possesses two things that will give Magomed a ton of trouble. He is the master of these two things, and those two things being the left hook, obviously, and what we've seen Ankalaev kind of suffer with in the past being the low kicks. He's the master of that low calf kick. With Ankalaev, man, I get why people are on him. I understand. But you have to understand on my end, like, this is a guy that I live bet thinking he was going to beat Jan Blachowicz at like minus 400, I think. I was that confident that this guy was going to beat him after he started wrestling, and he still went to a draw. That was stupid on my part. I 100% get that. But, like, man, when your dick is hard and you think you're about to win some money, you do some stupid shit. This guy is a perpetual ball dropper, man. Like, he is more of a striker than he is a wrestler. And yes, he's the more active of the two wrestlers. But when you look at not the odds, but when you look at the stats, one of these men has 100% takedown accuracy, and it's not Ankalaev. He's a 31% accuracy. I think he can wrestle. He's just a better striker, but he's just a kind of meat and potatoes kickboxer. I think put it to you this way: if he does get Pereira down, I don't think he's going to sub him. I think he's more likely to TKO him or knock him out on the feet than he is on the ground. Pereira, black belt, whether it's a fucking gifted black belt or not, he is still definitely learning. And man, I'm seeing stuff from Pereira where he's actually going for takedowns of his own, and he's got some decent entries, man. Like, he's pretty slick. If you don't think he can take you down, that's going to be fantastic. Like, I can actually, I might even bet Alex to get one takedown. That'd be fucking dope. It's probably going to be like minus 3,300 or plus 3,300. But here's the way I see it. When I'm looking at the matchups, right, when Ankalaev sees any danger in an opponent, he tends to fight pretty conservatively. Low output. We saw that against another Brazilian in Thiago Santos, or even Thiago caught him with the left hook. With Jan Blachowicz, he was super tentative. Blachowicz was destroying the lead leg and the calf kick, or with the calf kick on Ankalaev. And I'm not saying that like, oh, he's going to hit him a couple times. Like, I'm positive Ankalaev's going to be training to avoid that and avoiding the left hook. It's just that if this is a standard Ankalaev fight where you expect him to wrestle and he's going to come out here and kickbox to prove a point, even if he's winning on the cards, he still has 5 rounds to deal with Pereira. And Pereira, if he lands just once, it's going to be game over for Magomed. Okay? If he tenderizes, it just takes like 2 or 3 from Pereira to land cleanly to really destroy the calf of Ankalaev. I think Ankalaev is a very good fighter, but man, you can even say like, oh, a guy who loses to Paul Craig isn't a guy that I'm going to ever pick to be a champion. He had his chance to be champion. He fucked up so bad, went to a draw with Blachowicz. Blachowicz looked better in that fight. And had it not been for that 10-8 or 2 10-8s, he would not be in this conversation at all, because that's what caused it to be a draw. That's my thing about it. Number one, overall, Pereira, cum guzzler all day, every day. I'll hug those nuts until I die to this day. But what I am seeing is Ankalaev is not reliable for me. And I'm not trying to create the narrative to make me feel better or to, cope. I do see those holes from Ankalaev. If he's not actively wrestling, he's going to have to come out here and wrestle him immediately. But I actually suspect that he will, if it goes all 5 rounds, start wrestling later. I think he's going to keep it on the feet, trying to make some reads. If he gets hurt at that point, he'll go for the wrestling. I just don't think he's capable of doing that for 5 rounds. And what if Pereira actually stuffs takedowns? Like, clearly he's going to be training. So for me, I'm never going to pick against Pereira. I'm going to pick him to win by knockout in round number 3. I think at a certain point, he's probably going to be losing this fight. I'm going to be realistic. He's probably going to be losing this fight, and Magomedov will do something fucking dumb and give that opportunity for Pereira to knock him out. And here's the thing, Pereira, win or lose this fight, he already has a UFC Hall of Fame caliber career. Highlight after highlight, just doing what he's been doing, knocking out former champions. Like, as of late, he has not fought anyone who is not worthy. Some might even say the Khalil Roundtree fight. Khalil wasn't worthy of it, but we saw what kind of a fight that was. Like, UFC knew what they were doing. And for Ankalaev, they don't want him as a champion. This guy is, he could come out here and beat Pereira, and then they give him John Blachowicz, and John knocks him out. And John, I know he's fighting recently. He's fighting Carlos Olberg. If he gets past Olberg and Ankalaev wins, I would like to see that rematch. But ultimately, I'm going with Pereira just due to fucking simping on the man super hard. So yeah, let me know what you think about this card itself, your picks, your thoughts, whatever. Am I the there's that dude Kenny on Twitter that I see often that is like the opposite of me. He goes for Izzy. Am I that version for Pereira? Probably. I'll simp the guy all day and every night. But yeah, let me know what your thoughts are. Johnny TigerBomb. I will see you in the next video.